Fled home to Spain after Tom ordered her to leave his Los Angeles mansion. The paper says their relationship has been plagued with rows about Tom's ex-wife, Nicole Kidman. Let's take a look at today's weather now. It's quite misty this morning across eastern England and Scotland, but this mist and low cloud will retreat to the coast this morning, leaving much of the country with a fine sunny afternoon. Southwest England and Wales will be more cloudy with some sharp showers later. Warm again away from the east coast, but not as warm as the last few days, with a chilly east wind picking up. 6 minutes past 6. I'll be back in half an hour. Back to Penny and John.
Thanks very much indeed, Jackie. Coming up, more on the preparations for the Queen Mother's ceremonial procession a little bit later today, but first look at the papers, yeah?
And here's the front page of the Daily Mail. Bombshell as Bush turns his anger on Israelis, along with the picture of Liz Hurley there. The Sun, the same combination, Liz Hurley and Get Out, Bush's stunning demand to Israel. The Express says that oil price increases will kill us all, and the Mirror says, hypocrite, how dare George Bush preach peace to Israel when he's meeting Blair to plan war on Iraq, and that's by John Pilger, campaigning journalist.
Indeed, and the Middle East commanding the front pages of the broadsheets as well. Enough is enough is the headline, as you can see in The Guardian, along there with a picture of Mr Bush, the Independent. Bush tells Israel enough is enough, same headline, picture of Mr Bush and Colin Powell before their statement on the lawn of the White House yesterday. Bush demands Israel leave the West Bank, alongside a picture of a sailor at yesterday's rehearsal for this morning's procession. The Financial Times, Bush calls for a halt to Israeli offensive, and again the same picture of Mr Bush and Colin Powell. And in the Daily Telegraph, Bush tells Israel to withdraw, and a picture also there of the Queen. She had a wonderful life, Queen tells well-wishers at Windsor yesterday.
Talking obviously about the Queen Mother, and in just a few hours' time the Queen Mother's coffin will be taken in procession to Westminster Hall, and there it'll lie in state, draped in her personal standard, until the funeral next week. Well, since Tuesday, her coffin has been kept in the Queen's Chapel at St James's Palace. Only members of the royal family, friends and former members of staff have been allowed to visit. We can now cross to Lucy Vandenbroek, who's at St James's Palace for us this morning. Lucy, good morning.
Penny, good morning to you. Now, the Queen Mother's coffin is, as you say, in the Royal Chapel. That's the cream building on the right-hand side. It's been there since Tuesday when it was brought from the Chapel of All Saints and Windsor Palace. In the course of that time, members of the royal family have come to pay their respects. There have also been constant prayers around the coffin.
They came all day and they queued all night. Tens of thousands stand in line to pay their last respects to the Queen Mother. Good morning, I'm Kate Garraway and this is the News Hour on GMTV. Coming to you this morning live from Westminster Hall, where more than 140,000 people queued over the weekend to pay their last respects.
Came as troops were pulling out of Tulkarm and Qalqilia. There's been increasing US pressure for Israel to withdraw from Palestinian territories.
It looks like it is the beginning of the end of the Israeli army's Operation Protective Wall. Israeli forces withdraw from the town of Tulkarm. They're also pulling out of Qalqilia, and these troops at least are leaving the West Bank altogether. But at the same time, however, Israeli forces also went into another Palestinian town, Dura, near Hebron. There is a wish to demonstrate good faith to the Americans, but also a determination to carry on until the job is done. The policy was set out by Ariel Sharon in a defiant and determined Knesset speech. He accused Yasser Arafat of running a bureaucracy of murder and said he had the documents to prove it. As he talked, the Israeli army smashed not just the infrastructure of terror, as Mr. Sharon described it, but also the Palestinian Authority itself. Mr. Sharon has ordered the siege of Mr. Arafat's compound to continue, although he has now allowed the Palestinian leader to meet his aides to prepare ceasefire proposals. So when Colin Powell gets here later this week, there may be something approaching a ceasefire. But it's not clear if Israeli troops will leave the West Bank completely, or if Mr. Powell will see just a symbolic and limited pullout. That in turn will influence whether the Secretary of State can help put the Middle East on the road to a lasting peace, or if there will be only a pause in the fighting. Paul Wood, BBC News, Jerusalem.
The husband of a woman who died in the attacks on the World Trade Center is suing American Airlines for not stopping its planes from being hijacked. Bonnie Smethwick worked on the 93rd floor of one of the towers. Her husband is claiming that the airline could have done more to prevent the plane from being hijacked. American Airlines has not commented. There is no link between autism and the MMR vaccine, that's according to Dr. Paul Gringas, an expert in the field. He will tell the Edinburgh International Science Festival that claims the MMR jab caused autism have stalled research into the condition. He says new research should focus on treating autistic children and helping families to cope. Senior negotiators from the International Monetary Fund are in Argentina for more talks on a possible new aid package. They were greeted by hundreds of left-wing protesters who burned the US and British flags in protest against the government's austerity measures. The economy is in crisis, with unemployment at almost 20% and state services at breaking point. But the IMF is demanding even further cuts in state spending before it's prepared to offer new loans. After 2 delays, the Space Shuttle Atlantis has lifted off from Cape Canaveral in Florida on a voyage to the International Space Station. The crew's mission is to attach a new segment to the station which will carry solar panels. One of the crew members, Jerry Ross, has become the first person to be launched into space 7 times. There'll be more from the news desk at 5:30. Now it's back to Sophie and Jeremy at Westminster.
Maura, thanks very much. It was a very busy scene in Parliament Square just behind us when we arrived here this morning a couple of hours ago, wasn't it?
And it certainly has been the last few days, and you can see there, though, very quiet. The queues have gone because the doors for Westminster Hall have finally closed. Today is obviously a special programme in advance of the Queen Mother's funeral, which takes place at 11:30 this morning. In a moment, we're going to be having a look at the papers, and a lot of coverage about that in them.
Yeah, a lot of front pages, a lot of pictures, but there are other things going on in the world as well. Another Israeli invasion into the West Bank earlier on this morning, this time the southern town of Dora. But as the Israeli troops rolled into the town, the tanks began to pull out of the northern Palestinian cities of Tulkarm and Qalqilia. For the latest, let's go to Jerusalem to our correspondent, Paul Wood. Paul, the Americans were telling the Israelis they're meant to be pulling out, and here they are moving in again. What are they saying about the justification for this?
Well, they are beginning to pull out, which is what the Americans are looking for. But at the same time, in this one town, Dura, the army has confirmed it has sent tanks in there. And we've spoken to Palestinian eyewitnesses who speak of about a dozen tanks in the town itself, helicopter gunships firing heavy machine gun bullets, the Palestinians claim, into residential areas and fighting around the cemetery. So this is, on the one hand, saying, yes, we are pulling out. On the other hand, saying we're going to finish the job, as Ariel Sharon was saying in the Knesset yesterday.
The messages coming out of the White House sound more and more terse and more direct as far as the Israelis are concerned.
I don't think the Americans want to be embarrassed when Colin Powell comes here in a few days' time. If it looks like it's still a war in the West Bank, it will be very difficult for Mr. Powell to come away from his mission saving any kind of face. The Americans feel in the past they've been embarrassed by the Palestinians. This time they're worried that their ally, the government that they underwrite politically, economically and militarily, is going to do that job instead.
Yeah, the Americans, of course, give more than $3 billion a year to the Israelis. What about the situation in Bethlehem and those Palestinians who are holed up in the Church of the Nativity?
Well, it's still a very tense situation there, and the Israelis have tightly sealed the streets around Manger Square. What they're going to do, though, whether they're going to try and wait out the more than 100 gunmen which are thought to be hiding along with some nuns and priests inside that church, or whether they will go in, I think remains to be seen over the coming days. I think the Palestinians inside must be hoping that Colin Powell will speed his arrival here, and the Israelis have said, they have promised they will not storm this sacred site.
And the places where the fighting was heaviest, Nablus and Jenin, what about those cities?
Things seem to be winding up there. The Israelis are in control of at least half of Nablus. There was intense hand-to-hand street fighting in the dense maze of alleyways and stone passages, which is the Kasbah there. A lot of Palestinians have been surrendering. We're not sure what the situation is in Jenin, but the Israeli army promised it would be finished last night. It will have to be a massive assault if they haven't finished the mopping up there, which they said they would have to carry out this morning. So I think when Mr. Powell arrives here later on in the week, the question will be, are the Israelis going to completely withdraw, or will this be a case of a so-called buffer zone, something Mr. Sharon hinted at, something which would cut off any hope of the Palestinians having the kind of continuous territory they say they have to have if they're going to achieve their own state?
Paul in Jerusalem, thanks for joining us this morning.
Let's have a look at the papers now, and there are some wonderful front page photographs this morning in the papers. Take that photograph, for example, the Daily Telegraph. Queen thanks nation for its love, and that very moving sight there of the 4 grandsons, Prince Charles, Edward, Andrew and Lord Lindley, yesterday afternoon about 20 to 6, just before the Queen made her address to the nation, standing vigil around their grandmother's coffin.
Similar photograph there on the front page of the Daily Mail. The vigil, the 4 grandsons in Westminster Hall. Sophie and I were in there earlier on this morning, and there were still a lot of people, about 4:30 going through, weren't there?
Amazing. There were about 100 people, about 20 past 4 this morning. Lots of children as well. I was really surprised to see
People bringing their families in.
the Mirror this morning there. Thanks, Mum, and goodbye. And Prince Charles there, picked out alone in front of his grandmother's coffin. That incredible crown as well on top of it.
And the son, Queen Mum, and the Queen there, either side of their masthead, and that photo of the 4 grandsons standing vigil, and a line too from the Queen's speech to the nation last night.
And the Times has chosen instead to photograph there William and Harry and the Princess Royal along with the Countess of Wessex. They were standing by just on the side there, watching by as the grandsons held that vigil. And just very quickly, the Guardian as well, because they are alone this morning in not putting any photographs of that on the front page. They concentrate very much on the situation there. We fight on, says defiant Sharon, angry US sending in envoy and plan for buffer zones, as well as the news that Iraq is going to cut oil exports. Now, all the newspapers, as you have seen, have the Queen's moving tribute to her mother on their front pages. The Queen made a special point of thanking the public for their support and asked that today be a celebration of the Queen Mother's rich and varied life.
I hope that sadness will blend with a wider sense of thanksgiving, not just for her life, but for the times in which she lived. A century for this country and the Commonwealth, not without its trials and sorrows, but also one of extraordinary progress, full of examples of courage and service, as well as fun and laughter. This is what my mother would have understood.
And Sarah Bradford has written a biography both of the Queen and of her father, King George VI. She joins us now here in Syria, being with us throughout the programme, Sarah. Big day today, of course, isn't it, for the nation? A time to take stock more than anything else, I think, perhaps. And to celebrate.
Really, a historic day, isn't it? I think we felt that all through the past days. And this, of course, is the final. And for a lot of people, I think it's also a very sad day. I think for all those crowds that we saw over the past days, all the people who've lived their lives with the Queen Mother, almost none of us are older than the Queen Mother. And so this is the farewell.
But it's amazing, the atmosphere. And both of us went in this morning to Westminster Hall, and it's an amazing atmosphere. And it's very quiet, very still, beautiful scene there. And the crowds out here, so it's very sort of, it's great, actually. It's lovely. It's obviously going to be a celebration as the Queen wanted as well.
Yes, I think it's wonderful. I think for many of us it's a first in a lifetime experience, because unless you were old enough to be around for the coronation, there haven't been many really beautiful ceremonial occasions like this.
Now, the Queen Mother had quite a say, didn't she, in what would happen today?
I gather, right down to the last thing, and disapproving of one horse that was behaving badly.
Tell us, because of course most of us think of the Queen Mother as rather an old lady, but tell us about the impact she had on the royal family when she joined it as a young, glamorous woman.
Well, it was an extraordinary impact, because the royal family up till then, very much following Queen Mary's example, they didn't smile in public. It was considered non-royal to smile, and nobody could stop the Queen Mother smiling. She just broke all the rules. Really? She waved and smiled and was just herself.
Well, that's certainly changed over the years, hasn't it? I mean, she obviously led the way in that one.
Yeah, and she broke the rules, of course, early on in her royal career when she gave an interview, and a mistake she never made again.
Yes. She let the Daily Mail into her house, I think.
Well, there you go.
When she was engaged. And Queen Mary really carpeted her about that, and that was it.
It's going to be very moving as well. After the funeral takes place this morning, when the cortege leaves, it's going to go past the statue, isn't it, of her husband?
Yes. Yes, for the second time, of course, was on the way here too. And this was a wonderful marriage. They loved each other very, very much. And I think that when the present Queen got married, the King wrote this wonderful letter to her, saying how he felt he'd lost something precious in giving her away. And then he did say, you know what I think of your mother is the most wonderful woman in the world. And that's after they've been married 25 years or so. So it was a very, very deep relationship.
How much influence did she have on her husband, though? He was a very shy man to begin with, wasn't he?
Well, I think it would have been very difficult for him to do it without her. He had a terrible stammer. He had a terrific inferiority complex vis-a-vis his elder brother, the Duke of Windsor. And he also had a sort of fear of crowds. He was shy, he was reserved. So many people thought that he wouldn't make a good king and that he might even not be able to get through the coronation ceremony. But she gave him all that social confidence that he didn't have. You know, famous stories about wave, Bertie, wave to the crowds from the train and that kind of thing. And with the stammer, she used to attend the therapy lessons, and then when he had to give speeches, she'd sit in front of him, just sort of smiling and willing him on.
A sort of confidence thing.
Yes,
Lovely.
absolutely.
Sarah, you'll be with us this morning, so thank you very much for now.
Plenty to talk about this morning. Things, of course, in the business world. Across the country, many shops and businesses are going to be closed as a mark of respect.
And Declan Curry is going to join us right now. He's at the London Stock Exchange, as usual. Good morning, Declan.
Sophie, Jeremy, good morning to both of you. Business industry and commerce paying its own tribute to the Queen Mother today. Here at the Stock Exchange, a 2-minute silence will be observed at 11:30 this morning, coinciding with the start of the funeral at Westminster Abbey. All automatic share trading will be halted. Stockbroking firms have been requested to suspend their trading also. The calculation of the FTSE 100 will also be suspended. Elsewhere in the city, companies that were scheduled to announce important news today have delayed that news. Tesco will reveal its results tomorrow. Marks & Spencer is also holding over a trading statement until tomorrow. On the high street across the country, retailers including Marks & Spencer, WH Smith and Boots will shut during the funeral itself, as will most of the major supermarkets. Branches of Next, Debenhams and John Lewis will not open until lunchtime. Some bank services will also be affected, with most, if not all, branches observing a 2-minute silence at 11:30. Courthouses across England and Wales will be closed for hearings today as a mark of respect. National Trust homes, shops and restaurants will be closed, though gardens and parks will remain open. English heritage sites will close until 2 o'clock. That's after the funeral procession has passed through the gates of Windsor. And the London Flower Show, run by the Royal Horticultural Society, of course, of which the Queen Mother had been a patron from 1937, has been cancelled. Let's take a moment just to look at what's been happening with share markets over the course of the last 24 hours. The Dow Jones in America down by 0.1% last night. IBM, Big Blue, the computer company, unveiling its first profits warning in more than 10 years. That sent those shares lower. It didn't affect the rest of the tech market, though, the market taking the view that the problems at IBM are specific to IBM. The Nasdaq in the States up by nearly 1% on the day. Here in London, the FTSE 100 was drifting through most of the day until the news came through from IBM. That sent the market down in the last hour of trading here in London. The market down by 1%, the FTSE 100 off by 55 points. In Tokyo this morning, the Nikkei is down by 1.5%. The pound is worth $1.43 and 3/20 against the euro, sterling worth €1.63 and 4/5.
Declan, thank you very much. Now we're much closer to Carol this morning than we usually are, and we can see what a lovely day it is out there.
Maybe we see the weather. It's a fine day, Carol, in London.
It is indeed, Jeremy. It's a chilly start to the day, though. In London at the moment, the temperature is 3 degrees Celsius, but it feels colder than that because we do have quite a brisk breeze coming from the northeast, which is a chilly direction at this time. Now, for the rest of today in the southeast, if you're lining the route between Westminster and Windsor, for example, the day should stay fine. We should see some sunshine coming through, and the maximum temperature we can expect is about 12 degrees Celsius, but again, it will be tempered a touch by the wind. And the outlook generally for the next few days for much of England and Wales is that it's going to stay dry. There will be the odd passing shower here and there. And for Scotland and Northern Ireland, some thicker cloud with some rain at times. But don't forget that chilly breeze affecting the southeast. So this morning then, for the rest of us, there is quite a good veil of cloud over parts of Scotland and also eastern England. But through the course of the day, for the rest of us, we should see some brightness coming through. And as I mentioned, just the risk of a passing shower in the southeastern corner. But all the time, through Northern Ireland and also Western Scotland, the cloud will thicken, and here we'll start to see some splashes of rain. Temperatures today, well, about 12 degrees Celsius, not just in London, but also, for example, in Belfast and also in Edinburgh. But the top temperature we can expect is about 14 in Cardiff. That's it from me. Back to you two.
Carol, thank you very much. If you're just joining us, this is, of course, a special programme from Breakfast on the day of the Queen Mother's funeral.
I think we can take a look at some of the crowds who are gathering outside Westminster Abbey. They've been there, some of them, for 48 hours now, sleeping out in tents with sleeping bags. When I was out there this morning, the Salvation Army tea lorry had arrived and they were queuing up to get cups of tea because it was pretty chilly.
Absolutely amazing. There have been people who, we met somebody yesterday, a man who'd been there for 24 hours already, I think. Incredible place, waiting there to make sure that they see the funeral cortege.
A lot of them, of course, were regulars at Clarence House on the Queen Mother's birthday. Contact us with your memories and thoughts about the Queen Mother at our email address.
That's www.bbc.co.uk/breakfast, or you can text message us as usual, 07736 100 100.
Let's get the latest where you are.
Thank you, Jeremy. A very good morning to you. I'm Tina Bangs with the news in the Northwest. Memorial services for the Queen Mother are to take place across the region following today's funeral in London. A multi-faith service will take place at St Werburgh's Catholic Church in Chester at 7:30 this evening. A memorial mass will be held at Liverpool's Catholic Cathedral at 5:15 this afternoon, and the 2-minute silence will be observed at the city's Anglican Cathedral at 11:30 this morning. Meanwhile, some of the region's most beautiful National Trust gardens will be opening free today so people can remember the Queen Mother in quiet contemplation. Lyme Park and Dunham Massey will not be charging the public today, while Blackpool's trams and Manchester's metro system will stop for 2 minutes. And in Salford, the Queen Mother will be fondly remembered at a home for disabled ex-servicemen by veterans of the Second World War.
I thought she was a very, very nice person. She was a beautiful, beautiful person. And I think she kept the family together.
Oh, I reckon she was a great person. Indeed she was, by Jove.
In other news, a man who spent 25 years in jail for murdering a woman in Manchester says he's found evidence which proves his innocence. The Criminal Cases Review Commission is considering the conviction of Robert Brown, who was jailed for life in 1977 for the murder of Annie Walsh. Robert Brown says police beat him to extract a false confession, but one of the officers involved in the investigation has denied the allegations. Travel news now. In Lancashire on the A584 at Norbreck, there's temporary traffic lights both ways between Redbank and Norbreck Road. In Cheshire on the A5480 at Blaken, there's gas mains works causing long delays in both directions at the A540 Parkgate Road junction. And on Merseyside on the M53 at Bidston, there's roadworks northbound between junctions 2 and 3. And the weather. Mist clearing to leave a dry day with a high of 14 degrees Celsius. Tonight fog in patches, and tomorrow dry but cloudy, and rain could happen on Thursday. See you later.
Good morning. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News, live from here in Westminster, a special programme on the morning of the Queen Mother's funeral.
The doors of Westminster Hall are now closed to the public. 200,000 people paid their respects to the Queen Mother over the past 4 days.
Later this morning, Irish Guards will carry the Queen Mother's coffin to Westminster Abbey, where the funeral will be held at 11:30 this morning.
And just before midnight last night, Prince Charles paid a second visit to Westminster Hall. In a private visit, he stood for 20 minutes by his grandmother's coffin. Later this morning, many thousands are expected to line the streets. They're already gathering now to pay their last respects as the Queen Mother makes her final journey from London to Westminster. The Queen Mother's final journey will take her past Buckingham Palace. There, the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight will show their respect for the Queen Mother by flying over the palace and the Mall. I think we can talk to Graham Satchell, who's there. Graham, what can you tell us?
Well, Jeremy, most of the royal family is still at Windsor this morning, but we are expecting them to gather here at Buckingham Palace in the next couple of hours. From here, they'll make their way down to where you are at Westminster Abbey for the funeral service. Now, once that service is completed, there will be a spectacular flypast here at Buckingham Palace. 2 Spitfires and a Lancaster bomber, officially known as the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, will fly up the Mall and over Buckingham Palace at exactly 1:45, at the same time as the funeral cortege is passing here on its way to Windsor. It is a fitting reminder of the service and duty that the Queen Mother gave to the country during the Second World War. Now, it's been a long and pretty cold night for hundreds of people who've been camped out outside Westminster Abbey to say their final farewells to the Queen Mother, and I spent much of the night with them.
We have all the time in the world.
It was a long, cold night, and some had only bubble wrap to keep them warm. But this is a hardy, dedicated bunch, and nothing would have kept them away. The Stout family have flown in specially from Northern Ireland.
Oh, she was a fantastic lady. I mean, from I was a child, my mother and my grandmother talked about her, so you just felt as if you knew her, even though we never had the chance to meet her.
Look down. Sorry.
Many here have personal memories, like Veronica, who wrote to the Queen Mother over a number of years.
When I got the very first letter, I was delighted. I couldn't believe that she would write back to me.
Others have come simply to share their sympathy.
I feel for the Queen at the moment, because I lost my mother last year, and I thought, you know, losing a mother and a sister in such a short time, it's awful.
Every step of the way we'll find.
Just hundreds of yards from the campers, that other great British tradition. For a 4th night in a row, they stood in line for hours and hours. The atmosphere outside Westminster Abbey was patriotic, warm. Many said the Queen Mother would have enjoyed it. Complete strangers were making firm friends.
People don't know anybody, but they literally just get along in talking to everybody and just, you know, literally helping each other out.
Jean and her daughter Laura followed the Queen Mother for more than 10 years. For them, this is a chapter of history closing.
My daughter and I feel as though it's the end of like the Victorian type era, where the Queen Mother, as well as being a real lady, it's not the same today.
So what of the next generation? If the Daniel family is anything to go by, the royals have nothing to worry about. Their youngest, Morgan, is only just 1.
It's a moment of history, and although she won't remember it, she's actually here, and we'll remember it, and we'll be able to tell her about it in years to come.
As we left, others were arriving, struggling to put up their tents, struggling to keep warm, but determined to be there.
Only love.
So a very difficult night for hundreds of people, not much comfort on those cold pavement slabs, but it was amazing how many people said to me if the Queen Mother herself had been there, how much they think she would have enjoyed it. From Buckingham Palace, it's back to you.
That's a feeling that's reflected a lot here as well in Westminster.
Yeah, there was a great atmosphere actually this morning. It was relaxed. It was, you know, it was reverential, but it wasn't sad.
A lot of people with young children have come out here as well. Well, let's have a look now at the live shots. This is where people have been waiting. Many of them have been waiting all night. Of course, the people there in the front rows, lots of them have been camping out. I've seen many of those people yesterday. We came down here yesterday. A lot of them there with tents, waiting to see the short procession to the Abbey, which takes place at 11:30, just before 11:30 this morning. Well, John Morrison is at Glamis Castle in Scotland, where the Queen Mother spent much of her childhood. John, she was very attached to Scotland, wasn't she?
She certainly was, and this is Glamis Castle behind me here. It's looking stunning in the early morning light here. I think you can probably see on the doorsteps some of the bouquets that have been left by well-wishers here. And I think today the main focus in Scotland is going to be a short service which will be held at the church in Forfar, just a few miles down the road from here, where incredibly 86 years ago the Queen Mother was confirmed as a young girl along with 12 other local children. She'll be remembered there as a person who was very much of this community and loved by the local community.
A lot of people from Scotland will, of course, be attending today's ceremony, but many people have been doing their bit, paying their last respects and signing lots of the condolence books, which are all across the country, in Scotland, everywhere, aren't they?
That's right. She'll be remembered here very much as the Scottish Queen, the Scottish Queen Mother. She's been described as a great daughter of Scotland. The Scottish First Minister and the leader of the principal opposition party, the SNP, they'll be down there amongst lots of other Scots who have been invited, most of our own staff here at Glamis, and also up further up the coast in Thurso at the Castle of May. They'll be down there as well. But right across the country, the Queen Mother will be remembered. There are minutes of silence being held at hotels, shops are closed, universities, all National Trust buildings are going to be closed. Glamis Castle here is closed as a mark of respect, so is Balmoral. So she'll be remembered right across the country this morning.
John, you mentioned Castle of May there. I mean, that was something she was particularly attached to, wasn't it? She actually owned that herself.
That's right. She bought this in the 1950s when she was a young grieving widow. It was almost derelict. It needed us, the person who on whose estate it is, he said that it needed loving attention. She gave it that, and she really enjoyed going up there because one of the main joys of her life was fishing on the local river there, the River Thurso, where she spent many happy hours.
John Morrison there at Glamis Castle, thank you very much. We've had lots of text messages already, emails coming in from you, a few of them here. Caroline saying, what a wonderful farewell to our Queen Mother. She's touched each and every one of our hearts. God bless her, and may she forever rest in peace.
And Nigel Burton says, I would dearly love to have met her. Fancy being 14 when the First World War started.
And another one who says, I'm an Egyptian young woman who loved and admired the Queen Mother. Her death marks the end of a golden era. She is in my heart and prayers always. Thank you for who you were.
And plenty of those come in, and we'll keep you updated as well. And before 7, we'll be at Windsor to see what's happening there, to see people gathering, preparing for what will be transpiring there later in the day. But first, here's Maura with the rest of the news this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Israeli troops have invaded another West Bank town early this morning. The new incursion into the southern town of Dura came as troops were pulling out of the West Bank cities of Tulkarm and Qalqilia amid increasing U.S. pressure for Israel to end its 12-day offensive against Palestinian militants. Speaking to the BBC, Israel's Foreign Minister Shimon Peres denied that a limited pullout of forces was a snub to President Bush.
We are looking how to start right away. We don't want to defy. We don't want to go on a collision course. Look, we are not so light-minded as you may think. It's a very serious matter for us. We have to answer to our people. We have to defend their lives. We have to face an impossible terroristic layout with suicide bombers. And we are alone, basically.
The husband of a woman who died in the attacks on the World Trade Center is suing American Airlines for not stopping its plane from being hijacked. Bonnie Smithick worked on the 93rd floor of one of the towers. Her husband is claiming that the airline could have done more to prevent the plane from being hijacked. American Airlines have not commented. Sport now, and Newcastle United and Fulham shared a 1-1 draw in last night's Premiership match at St James's Park. The result takes Newcastle back up to 4th position in the table as they chase a Champions League place next season. Their goal was scored by Kieran Dyer halfway through the first half, but Fulham secured a vital point in their fight against relegation when their former Newcastle striker, Louis Saha, equalised against his old club 15 minutes from the end. Tonight, Liverpool are hoping to book a place in the semi-finals of the Champions League and a possible meeting with Manchester United. They're in Germany for the second leg of their quarter-final against the German league leaders Bayer Leverkusen. Liverpool hold a 1-0 lead from last week's first leg and should be confident of progressing as they're unbeaten away from home in this season's competition.
1-0 is a good result for the first leg. Keeping a clean sheet away from, at home puts you in a position where you can envisage that you have a strategy to qualify.
And that's the news for now. Back to Jeremy and Sophie at Westminster.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. If you just joined us, this, of course, is a special programme from breakfast on the day of the Queen Mother's funeral. It starts this morning at 11:30. Thousands of people are expected to line the route as the Queen Mother makes her journey from Westminster after the ceremony to her final resting place at St George's Chapel in Windsor.
The cortege will leave Westminster Abbey just after 12:30 and pass along a route chosen by the Queen Mother herself, along the Mall, past her former residence, Clarence House, and onto Buckingham Palace, where there'll be an RAF flypast.
From there, the procession will go through Hyde Park, past the gates erected to mark her birthday, and leaving by the Queen's Gate. The convoy then moves west through London to Hammersmith, and there it will join the A4, avoiding the motorway, the M4 that is, which the Queen Mother is said to have disliked. The cortege will travel past Heathrow Airport and through the village of Datchet. It's expected to arrive at Windsor shortly before 2 o'clock. Now, of course, we'll have full coverage of all those events on the BBC this morning. We are on air right now, but the coverage continues throughout the morning. We've got plenty of emails and things coming through from our viewers this morning. If you want to send us any of your messages, do, of course, get in touch. I can just tell you a few more views now. One from Tina in Lichfield, who says is rather upset that she has to work today and says that she doesn't think we should, and that we should use this day to reflect on all the good that the Queen Mother has done for this country.
A lot of shops will be closed for part of the day, some of them for all of the day, so you better check yourself if you're thinking of going shopping today. Certainly at the time of the funeral service itself, starting at 11:30, a lot of shops will have closed to allow their staff to watch what's going on.
Another text message here from Neil in Glasgow, who says the Queen Mum symbolised Britain's strength and courage in our darkest days. She will be forever missed by all generations. Rest in peace, Mum, he says. Do keep your views coming. You know the numbers, 07736 100 100, and you can get through to us also via our website, www.bbc.co.uk/breakfast.
Now, Breakfast Paul Welsh has been looking at the complex logistical operation that's taking place to make today's ceremony run smoothly.
The ancient and modern, preparing a 1,000-year-old building for another moment of history. Work towards today's funeral service began shortly after the Queen Mother's death 10 days ago. Thousands have already been involved in this huge national event, putting up temporary buildings and removing the central reservation of the road leading to the Abbey to allow the parade to move freely.
Go on, we got this. Come on, big hand.
This will be the nation's memorial to the Queen Mother, and to allow the nation to take part, more than 100 television cameras have been put into place. Technology not invented when she was born will relay her final journey to the country and to the world. It will be the biggest broadcast of its kind.
You feel this extraordinary sense of history, and we're recording history. And you look back at the film of Churchill's funeral and procession to lying in state and King George VI, and those are magical films, great pieces. And one day, what we're doing today will be like that, and that's kind of what's at the back of your mind.
Winston Churchill's funeral in 1965 was the last on this scale. While the Queen Mother's isn't a state funeral as his was, it will be hard to see the difference. The Irish Guards are providing the coffin bearers. 8 men will carry the 32-stone coffin into the Abbey. They'd been rehearsing the difficult walk up the Abbey's small steps and along its slippery stone floor. The officer in charge of the bearer party told me his battle-hardened soldiers are nervous, but it'll be a proud moment.
Of course, a degree of nerves, but we've been rehearsing for this now for several days, and it's got to the stage where actually our drills should kick in, and I believe, and I'm completely confident that will carry us through, and the moment we start, all the stage fright will dissipate, I believe.
Westminster Abbey played a large part in the Queen Mother's life. It was the scene of her marriage and the weddings of her children and some of her grandchildren. The Queen Mother was crowned in the Abbey alongside George VI, and his funeral service was there. Today, it stands ready for the funeral service, which the Queen says will honour her mother in death.
And Paul Welsh joins us now from Windsor. Paul, are many people gathering there to watch the cortege as it makes its final journey?
Not as yet. There are about half a dozen or so people here. A couple had spent most of the night here in the bitterly cold temperatures. But it is very early hours here for the funeral events here. The Queen Mother won't be arriving here. Queen Mother's coffin won't be arriving here until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. The Queen has spent the night here. She's inside Windsor Castle. She'll be leaving here sometime sort of mid-morning to go to Buckingham Palace to prepare for the funeral. Now, this, of course, is where everything will finish today. The Queen Mother's funeral arriving here say, about 2 o'clock. And then sometime early evening, there'll be a very private service for the royal family at St George's Chapel, which is just on the other side of the walls of the castle there, where the Queen Mother will be interred alongside her husband, King George VI, and along with the ashes of Princess Margaret, whose funeral was, as you remember, earlier this year.
Paul Welsh will be speaking to you later on in the programme. For now, thank you.
Let's look at some text messages. There's one here from Sue. She says, I think it's a pity that so many people, me included, are unable to watch the Queen Mum's funeral on TV as we've got to go to work. It's not the same on video.
Another as well from Lisa, who says, morning, Sophie and Jeremy. I just saw an Irish lady say exactly the same as me, as her mother. The Queen Mum's always been around. She felt as if she's lost someone that she knows.
And we've had one too from Kerry Phillips from Rochester. She's camped outside on her own, outside Westminster, her own vigil.
Amazing.
Well done, Kerry, 17 years old.
It was very, very cold out there. Well, across the country, many shops and businesses will be closed as a mark of respect today. With the details, here's Declan Curry at the London Stock Exchange.
Sophie, Jeremy, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, from the London Stock Exchange, where there will be a 2-minute silence here at 11:30 this morning, coinciding with the start of the Queen Mother's funeral. Automatic trading on the London Stock Exchange will be suspended, and stockbroking firms have been asked to suspend their own manual trading as well. The calculation of the FTSE 100 will also be put on hold. Elsewhere in the city, companies that were scheduled to announce important news today have postponed that news. Tesco is delaying its results until tomorrow, and Marks & Spencer is holding over a trading statement. On high streets across the country, retailers including Marks & Spencer, Boots and WH Smith will shut during the funeral itself, as will most of the major supermarkets. Some other stores, including branches of Next, John Lewis and Debenhams, will remain closed for the entirety of the morning. Bank services may also be affected, most bank branches in the UK observing a 2-minute silence at 11:30. On the legal scene, courthouses in England and Wales will be closed for hearings for today. The National Trust is closing all of its stately homes, shops and restaurants, though its gardens and parks will remain open. Properties owned by English Heritage will remain closed until 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's until after the procession has passed through the gates of Windsor. And the London Flower Show, run by the Royal Horticultural Society, of which the Queen Mother has been a patron since 1937, has been cancelled. Let's take a moment just to look at what's been happening with the markets all around the world over the course of the last 24 hours. In America last night, the Dow Jones was damaged by a profits warning at the computer giant IBM, the first profits warning from Big Blue in more than 10 years. That sent the Dow down by 1/5 of 1% at the close, though at one point it was down by more than 150 points. However, the market's taking the view that the problems at IBM were just specific to IBM. They don't affect the tech industry generally. The Nasdaq was able to gain 15 points on the day, closing at 1,785. Here in London, the FTSE 100 fairly listless trading throughout most of the day until the news from IBM came through. That sent the London markets down by 55 points. In Tokyo this morning, the Nikkei is down by 1.75 of 1%. The pound is worth $1.43 and a fifth, €1.63 and 4/5.
Declan, thank you very much. Now, after this programme, you'll be able to see full coverage of the funeral itself on BBC One, which will be covering the whole event live this morning. Fiona Bruce joins us now from Westminster Abbey. Fiona, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people to come down here. There's very little space, isn't there? But people can see an awful lot on television today.
They certainly can. We'll be on the air at 9 o'clock, and we'll be bringing you the final act, if you like, in the nation's farewell to the Queen Mother. I'll be among the crowds here at Westminster, and I don't know if you can see behind me, there are probably about 2,000 people here already. And then David Dimbleby will be commentating as the coffin moves on a gun carriage just a short distance from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. We'll be bringing you live coverage of the funeral service, which the Queen Mother has ensured includes her favourite words, prayers and music. And then we'll be following the coffin as it makes its way by car to Windsor.
Fiona, if people do want to come down, if they don't want to watch it on television, is there space still for them to make it there?
Well, there is space, but I have to say, you're around here, people probably 10 deep already. I mean, you have to remember some people have been camping out here for 2 nights now, even without tents, so they're very lucky it hasn't rained. But yes, there is still space, not just here where I am at Westminster, but on the other side of Parliament Square. So it is still worth coming. The police are making as much room as possible, and everyone knows that this has become an event as much as anything about the people's relationship with the Queen Mother, and the police are being as amenable as they can and allowing as much space as they can for people to come.
Yeah, Fiona, thanks very much. Well, please contact us with your memories, thoughts about the Queen Mother this morning. You can email us from our website, www.bbc.co.uk/breakfast.
We've got a new one already, one from Abdul in Hackney, who says, if there's anything I'll miss the most, it'll be the hearty smiles she gives everyone that comes her way, regardless. Another as well from Mark in Bath, who says, I would have liked to seen the funeral on television, but the company he works for has denied this, and we're told that we have to even answer calls through the silence.
It's a bit mean, isn't it? We've actually had quite a few people saying it's a shame that there isn't a holiday today, so we can pay our respects in the way that we'd like to.
It was decided that would not happen. Well, the crowds are continuing to gather here for the Queen Mother's funeral, and it is estimated that 200,000 people have paid their respects now by filing past the Queen Mother's coffin in Westminster Hall.
There have been some moving pictures, and let's reflect on some of those defining images, past and present, of the Queen Mother.
She was an amazing lady in today's society where things are changing. To me, she's someone who represents duty and what honour is and what it means to give.